I work in London at Roehampton University. I did my teacher training and I taught for about 20 years, mostly in special schools and in hospitals. I have a particular interest in boys and girls in hospital. And in England, we have quite a few big children's hospitals where there is a school inside the hospital. And teachers work with the boys and girls on the wards when they're not well, and we liaise with their own schools. I'm also particularly interested in dyslexia. That's one of the most common special needs across the world. In England, we have a lot of boys and girls with dyslexia. I'm sure you do here in Lithuania as well. And I'm also interested in e-learning and using technology for boys and girls with special needs. There's a lot of really good software now that they can use to help them with their studies. And as Teresa mentioned, we've done a lot of international projects at Roehampton. One of the main projects I've been involved with is working with teachers in India who have an enormous challenge. Only 50% of their children go to school. So the other 50% never have any education. So for them, inclusive education is a big challenge for all the children, not just for the ones who go to school. So what we want to talk about today is doing it differently. I was really pleased when Salomea sent me the name for this session today, because I think it's really helpful sometimes to have a day like this and to sit with some colleagues and perhaps people you work with and to think about in your school, what could you do differently? So what we're going to do for the rest of the day, sometimes it will be me talking, but I would like you to do some work as well. There's nothing worse than just sitting all day listening to somebody else talking. That's not what I've come for. So I want you to have some discussions and for you to think about your own practice and to reflect on your practice. I know some of you are working in schools and some of you are involved in teacher training and other professional areas. So it's fantastic that you can hear some different opinions today from different colleagues and different types of schools. And also, where can you go to find out about good practice? England is a little bit bigger than Lithuania, but not much compared to very big countries like America, for example. So it's important not to just look in your own country, but to look at what other countries are doing as well, and to see what they say about good practice. I was really pleased to hear that I was coming to Lithuania. I've heard a lot about Lithuania, and sometimes I fly over Lithuania and look out the window and I say, there's Lithuania. But I've only seen it from so many meters up in the air. And a long time ago, some of my family's relatives came from Minsk and Vilnius 200 years ago. So we've always been talking about where is Vilnius. So it's lovely to be here. Okay, so in England, we've had a lot of arguments about inclusion and what does inclusion mean. And for about 20 or 30 years now, we've been having a big argument with the teachers and the government, similar to the discussions I think you're having here, about where do some of these boys and girls go to school. Do they go to your school, if you're a mainstream school? Or do they go to a special school? There's a lot of international discussion about this. Where's the best place for these children to go? So the international policy context, we're nearly 60 or 70 years now. So after the Second World War, we had in 1948 the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of that legislation. And it was that legislation that started the discussion about children coming into our schools. So again, 89, 1990, and the Salamanca Statement in 1994 again, that's the reason why we're here today. This is the big piece of legislation that's underpinning all these ideas about special needs and inclusion. So this is the United Nations in 1989. Now I've got this in my office at work, I've got this on my office wall, because I think this is a really, really important piece of writing. So Article 29, these are the goals of education, and these are supposed to be international goals, which is quite a challenge, and quite an expensive challenge as well. So education is supposed to develop every child's personality, talents, and abilities to the full. And it should encourage the child's respect for human rights, as well as respect for their parents, their own and other cultures, and the environment. That's a really big piece of writing, very important, and that's one of the reasons why we're here today as well, to think about how does my school or my college look at this work? How do we think about these things? So children's personality and their talents and their abilities. So the Salamanca Statement in '94, this was looking at an international commitment. And it was because of the Salamanca Statement that Salamea and her colleagues were able to get the funding for the project that she's been involved with. So a lot of funding has been given not just in Europe, but across the world, for schools to think about some of these things and how they can do it differently for children. So what Salamanca says is that boys and girls with special needs must have access to regular schools. So that's normal schools, mainstream schools, so that we can have education for all. So we can't leave them at home, and we can't leave them in hospital if they have no teaching, and we can't leave them in their caravans if they're gypsy children or travelling children. It's asking every village, every town to have schools where children can have access to schools. 20 years ago, there probably still would have been translation, and there would have been headphone technology. But what we didn't have was the legislation. So we've now got European legislation and international, so that working with disability, with inclusion, it's not an option anymore, it's the law. So we now have the law behind us when we want to look at changes in schools and colleges, which is good, because some countries, some governments wouldn't do it otherwise, unless it was the law. So it's a good way to make change happen. But it takes a long time for change. You can't just say, okay, next week all of Lithuania is going to be inclusive, because it takes a long time and it's expensive, and you have to look at training. So a big event like today's event organised from UPC is fantastic, because they meet other teachers and it gives them confidence. I hope it will give them confidence to try, even if they try one idea, I'll be pleased. They won't try everything, but it makes them to start having a discussion. So boys and girls with special needs, with different educational needs, sometimes they have difficulty processing information. So it might be that you've said something really clearly, like, okay, now it's nearly lunchtime, please can you go and queue up by the door? But some children, if they haven't got a very good memory, they might not be concentrating, they might not be listening, they might go to a different door, or they might not do anything at all. So sometimes students don't listen properly. Some students will learn things really fast, and some will learn things really slowly. So again, if you have a child like that, it's important to know why they can do things so fast. They might be really, really talented at maths, for example, or why they're doing things really slowly. Perhaps they're left-handed, as we said. I'm going to give you a little test this morning. Does anybody here speak Greek? I hope not. Excellent. What I want you to do is to get a piece of paper and a pen. And what I would like you to do, I would like you to, first of all, to listen to what I'm going to say and write it down as you hear it. Okay? And then secondly, I'm going to put some stuff on the board and I want you to copy it as fast as you can. When I was working in schools, I often used to do this. You would put the children's homework on the board or some instructions, and it would be nearly lunchtime or nearly time to go home, and you'd say, come on everybody, please write that down really quickly, and then all the children would be going home, and there'd be 2 or 3 children still sitting there trying to write because they hadn't finished. So I'm going to give you an example of what that feels like if you were the poor child who's not writing very well. And if you're normally right-handed, I'd like you to use your left hand, please. Okay, no cheating.
Apie tokias populiarias metodinės dienas tai žinome jau ne pirmą kartą, taip kad kolegos visuomet parsineša labai daug šaunios informacijos ir esam girdėję ne iš vieno kolegos, kad tai labai šaunūs seminarai, kuriuose būtina dalyvauti, tai brandina mokytoją kaip asmenybę apskritai.
Randi tokią informaciją, kad atvažiuoja užsienio žvaigždės, užsienio ugdymo ekspertai į Lietuvą, tai negali praleistas progos ir tiesiog būtina tą pamatyti.
Šitie seminarai yra naudingi todėl, kad jie galbūt nėra dalykinė prasme labai tokie gilūs dalykinė, jie yra tokie labiau platesni bendražmogiškąja prasme.
Lektoriai labai šauniai veda seminarą ta prasme, kad mokytojas susivoktų, kaip reikia dirbti su mokiniais specialių poreikių, turinčiais specialių poreikių ir susivokti ne tai teorinė prasme, bet praktiškai pasijusti šitų mokinių kailyje ir tiesiog suvokti, kaip jų trikdymas, jų elementariausių pojūčių, klausos, regos, rašysenos pojūčių trikdymas, kaip gali trukdyti jų darbui, suvokimui ir mokytojai labai gerai pasijusti jų kailyje.
Pavyzdžiui, tokia užduotis, kai reikėjo rašyti tekstą kairę ranką arba nesuprantamą tekstą, iš tikrųjų jautėmės kaip vaikai, kurie galbūt ne visada supranta ar ne visada suspėja parašyti tai, ką sako, rašo mokytojas ant lentos ar ko mokytojas nori, ir tai padeda iš tikrųjų labiau suprasti ir mokinius klasėje.
Padeda apskritai žiūrėti į vaiką kaip asmenybę, ieškoti jo unikalumo, jo skirtingumo ir aišku, ta patirtis, kuri ateina iš kitų mokytojų, ypač kurie, pavyzdžiui, čia yra mokytojai, kurie dirba su specialiais poreikiais ir yra, mes sakom, iš tokių paprastų mokyklų. Ir ta patirtis yra labai naudinga, aš manau.
When I saw all the teachers this morning, if they were not talking, I would not have known that they were Lithuanian teachers, because most teachers around the whole world are very committed people, very wanting to work with children that they work with. So it was, to me, this was the same whether it's in Germany or America, England. When you put teachers into small groups with a table and something for discussion, they will always have a good discussion about the children.
Ugdymo plėtotės centras yra institucija, kuri yra atsakinga, bet taip pat kuri jai ir rūpi ir kuri domisi, ko reikia pedagogui. Ir atitinkamai dėl to ugdymo plėtotės centre yra sukoncentruota didžiausios informacija, ko mokytojui reikia. Ir tą informaciją mes stengiamės dalintis.